Hey guys. So I've had friends and family that have been calling me a lot more than normal, and it's been wonderful because I love to hear from people. But I hear a lot of fear in people's voices and a concern about wanting to homestead like right now and be experts at it. And that's not really how homesteading works. And so instead, I want to come on and talk about something that you can do right now that is more beneficial to you than trying to do emergency homesteading. So the first thing I want to talk about today is my first go-to storage item in my food storage, because right now food storage, if you have fear, if you are worried, especially if you have a particular diet or a special diet, you want to start on your food storage instead of homesteading. So salt is like the first thing on my list. And the reason for that is that you can preserve food with salt for like indefinitely for some things. If you have pigs, pardon me, if you have meat, salt will allow you to preserve your meat without refrigeration. It also allows you to preserve vegetables without refrigeration. So you don't have to get fancy salt. This is just Himalayan salt that John likes to have on hand. But you can use regular table salt. You don't want it to be iodized, but just regular salt. It doesn't need to be coarse. It needs to probably be fine. But what you do is you can cure meat, and you can also salt vegetables for storage. It's the traditional way that vegetables and meat were stored and cured. I like to have about 100 pounds on hand at any given time. It takes somewhere between like 5 and 10 pounds of salt to cure a pig. And that's how we cure our pigs, is that once we butcher the pigs and let them sat overnight in the smokehouse to cool, we then salt them the next day. And over the course of a few days, we allow the salt to pull the moisture out of the meat. And it's essential. Next to water, it's the first thing that I put in my storage. So I'm going to try and do these little like tiny little tidbits rather than trying to make my normal 30-minute videos. I feel like you guys are getting lost. The information is getting lost in the 30-minute videos. And so I might just come on here live every morning, and I have a big, let's see, I'll tell you the list that I have to work through. I'm starting with salt, and then I'm going to go through dry goods, and then containers for dry goods, water, food allergies, fermentation, freezers, smokehouse seasonings, fat oil. And then after I have all those little mini videos put up, I will go ahead and do talking about homesteading, and if you want to start homesteading, where you want to start. On the 1st of April, I'm doing part in a collaboration that is, if I was to start homesteading in 2022, how would I go about doing that? And so that will be up on the 1st. Squeaky Tree Homestead is who's putting that collaboration on. And there's a whole bunch of other little channels along with me that are going to be doing those videos. So that will be a bigger 30-minute video that's going to take everything on my list and try to put it into a package for you. But once again, I would say that if you're concerned, if fuel prices have you concerned, if food prices have you concerned, if you don't already, I can give you tips in a new video about how to homestead more effectively, but if you haven't already started homesteading, now is not the time to do it. Now, hey, Homesteading Northern Michigan, now is not the time to suddenly jump into homesteading if you don't have food storage. You need to have your family's needs in your home ready to go. And because the amount of money that you would be spending on starting a homestead would equal the amount of money that you would spend to get a year's worth of food storage. If you're really trying to start a homestead and you're trying to get fences and everything in, you could spend $5,000 getting a homestead started, but then still not have food in your freezer. And I had a conversation with Teresa. She's one of my Patreons, or one of my patrons, And she and I had a conversation because that's exactly what she wanted to know. She wanted to know what to do with her homestead. And it was a lovely conversation, but it really drove home to me the things that I'm trying to do this year to save money on feed. Because with homesteading, unless you create all your own feed, unless you grow it on your property, you're still very much tied to the grid. And so it was a revelation to talk to her and hear that she was having the same thoughts and the same concerns as I was having, except that my understanding of really how deep it goes and what the escalating fuel prices and escalating fertilizer prices. Hey, Elaine. Hey, Mama. And so, right, I don't know if you guys know, but one of the most recent posts or concerns about what's going on in Ukraine and Russia is that Russia is one of the biggest exporters of fertilizer for agriculture. So do I think that it's really important to start homesteading? I do. But I think that you need food in your fridge, food in your freezer, a full pantry, literally a year's worth of food storage before you start homesteading so that your money goes as far as it possibly can, but keeping you safe instead of instead of being like a hopeful magic bullet, a homestead, now I'm self-reliant. Feed prices have gone up so much that unless you're getting some bulk discounts from a local farmer, you're not saving money by homesteading. You need to be really strategic right now if you're going to do it. So everybody here is from Michigan and Canada. Hello, the quiet life. So I would love to do a video later talking about how I have turned my farm into something that costs money to something that makes money. This year, that was the big push, was to cut back on everything I possibly could so that the animals were not only filling the freezer and filling the fridge, but were also paying for their own feed. I do have a video on that already about money making, money saving options, but that was 2-3 years ago. And prices have changed since then, so my method has changed since then. Hey, Teresa. And so that's what I want to do. I'm going to try really hard to come up with some dailies. Again, today was about salt. And if you want a little bit more access to me, and if you want to see what kind of is going on in my brain right now on the homestead, you can go be part of my Patreon. And the reason that works for me is because I don't actually have to sit down and like put makeup on and do a video. My daily blog on the Patreon allows me to do kind of a brain dump of my daily process. But yeah, so salt. And it's probably not a bad idea to learn how to use the salt if you have the capacity to go buy a little bit of side pork, not a big piece, but just like a small piece of side pork from your local butcher, and try to cure it with salt. And if you can get some fresh vegetables and try to ferment them, try to preserve them with salt, and start experimenting with things that don't require refrigeration, that would be good. Hey, Serenity Hill. Hey, Night Owl. Hey, Village Steader. Wow, we're all over the place this morning. I'm really hoping this is picking up. Usually my live streams are really choppy, which is why I don't do them very much anymore. So today is salt. If I remember that I'm doing this, tomorrow will be about dry goods. And once again, even though I'm a gardening homesteading channel, I want to make sure that you have your food storage in place before you spend a lot of money on homesteading or even gardening. I want you to actually have food in your home, because a garden takes 3 to even 9 months, depending on what you're growing, to actually put food in the fridge. And if you're focusing on putting something in the fridge in a year and you don't have stuff in the fridge now, then that is a bad place to be in. Now, another thing that my patron Teresa talked about was that the reason that she really wants to do homesteading is because she has food sensitivities. They literally can't eat dry goods, which is where our family is. So the reason why the majority of my prepper focus is on animals and gardens is because we literally can't eat a lot of dry goods, things like beans and corn or soy or rice. Those things make my family sick. And we also can't do canned goods without the enzymes in them that come from cooking. When you can something, you cook it. The enzymes are mostly destroyed, and our family doesn't digest that kind of thing very well. So our food storage is on the hoof. Let's make sure I haven't missed anybody. Lots of allergies and autoimmune stuff. Yeah. And so the reason that we homestead is because we have we do have local farmers that we could purchase from. It would be very difficult for us to afford to buy enough food in order to get the quantity that we need. Could we afford to buy something here and there from our local farmers? Yes. But in order for my family to have vibrant health, I've got to have the quantity that comes from a homestead. Hey, Watchman, good to see ya. Thank you for moderating. I don't know if you see you have a wrench. All right, and Village Setter said also the first few years, most people will have to amend their soil or build raised beds. 100%. It takes 5 years, in my opinion, to go from a new place to having a productive place. It takes 5 years. The exception to that is, like you said, hotbeds, raised beds, highly amended, purchased products. Hello, YouTube account. I'm glad that Japan is watching. So everybody that watches my channel has a different growing season, has different soil, but everybody out there probably has a fridge, a freezer, and a pantry. Fill those first. And I'm not saying that as far as like the effort. If you have something you can do that costs effort, then do that thing that just costs effort. But as far as your money goes right now, put it to food storage, whatever food storage you can eat. We do really well with dehydrated. We do okay with freeze-dried. I did try the freeze dryer, and they sent me a freeze dryer, and I did try it. I feel like it's a Ferrari. I feel like a little GeoPrism is plenty for me. And so I did take the freeze dryer to my mom's. I took the parts to my mom, and well, John really loved it. He loved the freeze dryer, but it's a Ferrari. You could buy a really nice dehydrator for $175, and that's what I have. And I have an open air dehydrator. But the $3,500 freeze dryer felt crazy if you're actually creating your own food, especially with all the electricity that goes into it. I feel like salt, so that you can make, sauerkraut or kimchi, is a much bigger step towards self-reliance than something like a freeze dryer. Now, if you love your freeze dryer, that's great. I hope you had the money to pay for it. Even with food storage, I would say be as creative as you can be, and don't be putting it on credit cards. Stay within your budget. Stay within your budget getting food storage, and then stay within your budget once you start homesteading. Some of the things that I've been spending money on for myself has been books. Pardon me. I have been working very hard on educating myself on the animals that require the most commercial feed for me, replacing them with genetics that don't require commercial feed, that I can source things locally, and that the animals are as efficient as they possibly can be and as easy for me to take care of as they possibly can be. With the rabbits, I just about sold all my rabbits because I had them on commercial feed. So I saved the money, took me a month to buy them. I got the books that talk about 100% replacing commercial feed. Now, I still give my rabbits a couple tablespoons of commercial feed a day, just so they're used to it. So if I had somebody needing to do chores, they could feed them the commercial feed. But I've replaced their pellets with hay, sunflower seeds, and locally grown wheat. And then during the growing season, I can feed them all the greens that come from the garden. Hey, Color Drop, how are you? And so anyway, those are all things I can talk about in other videos. Again, today is about salt. I have 100 pounds of salt in my food storage. It's not iodized. Well, actually, I do also have iodized, but I have other types of salt. And the reason is you can preserve meat, you can preserve vegetables with salt. And also your animals need salt, and they can just eat salt same as you can. It doesn't need to be something like Himalayan salt. What I have for preserving is just non-iodized salt, so like kosher salt. And you want to keep it in the package that it's in, plunk it in a bucket, seal the bucket, and that way your salt doesn't get chunky. But if you don't have refrigeration, it's a great way to go. If you don't have, we don't do really well with canned goods, and so even though I have a pressure canner and I have a regular hot pack canner, I don't use them very much. We much prefer pickled, enzyme-rich food. So, yes, and thank you for everybody who did a thumbs up. Did you buy it in a bulk bag? We did buy the salt in a bulk bag, but that was the iodized salt, and I think it was like 25 pounds for like $8 or something. Salt is incredibly inexpensive. So when I couldn't get other salt, I bought iodized salt. So if you can't get anything else, get iodized salt. The only thing it does in your canning is it can give like a gray cast to your canning stuff, but it's a color thing, not a food quality thing. And you could go and get salt from Winco, leave it in its containers. If it's already sealed in, you don't need to put it in another bucket, but sometimes they come in like a cardboard container instead of a plastic container. If they're in a cardboard container, you want to put it inside a food grade bucket, still in the container. That way it's easy just to pull one out, but then seal it so that you don't get moisture in the bucket. But yeah, a minimum of 100 pounds of salt. You're not using it necessarily to season food. You're using it to preserve food. And again, I'll try and go through the list of what I'm going to be trying to do over the next few days. Again, I have a collaboration on the 1st of April that's going to be, if I was starting homesteading in 2022, how would I do it? How would I do it differently from when I first started? And that's with Squeaky Tree Homestead. She's putting that on, and there's a whole bunch of other channels that are going to do it. And I think it's a great thing. But even on that video, I'm going to emphasize get your food storage first. So over the next few days, so today is salt, next one is dry goods, then I'm doing buckets, jars, and plastic containers for storage, and then water storage, food allergies, fermentation, freezers, smokehouse, seasonings, fat and oil. And if you guys have favorite videos of mine on my channel, please share them. Not all of them are equal. Some of them are way better than others. Some of them explain things better. But if you have some, so don't share all videos, but if you have some that really resonated with you, please share them. My weakness is getting links in. My weakness is like sharing my own videos out to wherever. But I feel like I do have some important videos that I wish people could see instead of me having to remake them, if that makes sense. Hey, Red in the Valley, good to see ya. Hey, Ashy Slashy. And then Village Sitter said, I like to store my salt in glass jars. I already have them. Yes, that is fantastic. And we'll talk. I will come on and try to address all of that later. That looks like it's day 3. So I have buckets, jars, and plastic. I store all sorts of things in canning jars because, yes, I already have them. And you don't have to put new lids on them. You can use old lids. Honey, can you stop playing with your change? What are you playing with? Another thing is make sure you have all your medication on hand, your vitamins, your medication. That's one thing that I'm working on. After having COVID, my lungs are very sensitive compared to what they were before. And so if I was to not be storing enough of what helps me with my lungs, that would be a foolishness on my part. Okay, Lori said, good morning from Switzerland. Our fallout shelter is completely reorganized. It's my pantry and food storage, but now also houses, camping gear, and emergency preps. Love your videos. I think that's fantastic. Mama Vinova said, we've had our Excalibur dehydrator for over 10 years. Absolutely pays for itself, even if you have to go smaller like Nesco, just my opinion. Yes, and the one that I like is a Nesco. My mom had an Excalibur when I was growing up, and she put it through its paces, and I do believe it lasted more than 10 years. The one that I like is the Garden Master, and I believe it is by Nesco, and it's $175. I've had mine for 2 or 3 years, and it's like the 3rd one that I've gone through because I really put it through its paces. And anyway, so I don't know how long this has been going, 20 minutes. I'll probably pop off, but maybe what I need to do at the end, after I get through all these things over the course of the next week and a half, maybe I need to like make a list or maybe you guys want to take notes on your end, that you need to sometimes think outside the box when you're doing food storage. One of the things that I could not live without is my wood stove in the winter, because we are a very cold area, and if we didn't have a way to heat our home and cook our food in the winter, we would die. So look at and adjust your food storage according to things that are most essential to your area. What is most essential? What is hardest to get? If it's hardest to get clean water, make sure you have a water filtration system that is hand activated. You know, for us, having a hand pump on our well was a big deal. So those are some of the things that I mean by like look outside the box. When you think of food storage, are you thinking about how you're going to cook your food storage? For me, the wood stove does everything. It does everything. And having a hand pump means that I can store water, but I know that I have a source of water out there that is hand activated, not electrical activated. We also have an outhouse. We don't use it, but we have it so that if the power went down, we could still have good hygiene. I'll try to cover all these things. If you guys want to come up with questions for me, make sure to email me. It's dirtpatcheaven@gmail.com, and it's 1H, not 2. So it's much easier for me to find it with email than to try and go through all the comments later and find what your questions were. Red Dirt Girl said she just got a Nesco. Yeah, I like the Nesco, not the smaller ones, but the Garden Master's the one that I really like. Reza Veranova says hello. Ashley Slashy said Harvest Right has the worst customer service. So Harvest Right is the freeze dryer that we were sent, and John really liked it. Once we got it, it did take 2 weeks. When he had a question about something, it took him 2 weeks, and him constantly calling in order to get that question answered. I will give you that. And it wasn't my forte. It wasn't something I loved. I felt like it took too much electricity and too much time for it to function the way I wanted it to, which is why I didn't do a review on it. I do have a what's it called, an affiliate link that they sent me, and I just haven't used it yet because I don't want to encourage people to buy something that's kind of a gadget, a very, very expensive gadget, when there are other tools that are so much less expensive that work just fine. Freeze dried is great, don't get me wrong, but I have never found a situation where I wish that I had a freeze dryer and that I wasn't just perfectly happy that I had a dehydrator. Okay, you're awfully noisy in there. Are you doing chores? Okay. If you want to go mix the grain, I will come out and help you. Do you have the grain mixed? Okay, go ahead and go mix the grain and I'll be out. Red in the Valley said, my concern is sourcing items for canning. Forgive me if it's been discussed. I came in late in a SHTF scenario. How do we get vinegar, sugar, etc.? I'm in Eastern Ontario, Canada. So, bulk. We have a Winco that's very similar. It's very similar to a Costco. And so when we buy things like that, we buy them in bulk. We put them in little Ziploc bags, and then we put them in a 5-gallon bucket, and we seal the bucket. The reason I do that is because when I'm sending kids downstairs, I need to let them take the lid off the bucket, and instead of exposing all of the sugar to moisture in the air or spills, all she has to do is grab that little 1-quart Ziploc bag out. Her sugar's there. She's not scooping it. Nothing gets wasted. You don't attract ants. You don't attract mice because of a spill. You take that Ziploc bag out of the 5-gallon bucket, you put the lid back on, push it down, and there's your food storage. So yeah, I would buy bulk for sure and have 5-gallon buckets. A lot of times you can go to local bakeries, and bakeries will have buckets that are from frosting and stuff like that that you can use. I like the 2-gallon buckets much better than the 5-gallon buckets because I can lift them easily. But yeah, you want to get bulk. I go, and when they have canning jar lids on sale, we just go buy a flat of the actual lid part, not the ring. And so we have like a 5-year supply of lids. I buy one flat. It costs like maybe, how much would it cost you? I think it's like the last time we bought a flat of canning jar lids, it was like $30, but it's a 5-year supply. and the rings are reusable. I do have jars. I do have canning jars, and I keep enough on hand that I can do some canning, but again, it's not what we really prefer to live on. We prefer to live on fresh because we digest it better. But my mom does a lot of pickling. She came out and picked a whole bunch of stuff out of my garden this year, and she fermented it for us. So I've got like 8-gallon jars of fermented sauerkraut type green beans that my mom did that I didn't have time to do, and she did them for me, and they were fantastic. They're so good. They're better than any kind of pickle. Hello, Darlene. Village Sitter said, I have 2 Nescos, the Garden Master and a smaller one I started with. Yeah, I think the Garden Masters are fantastic. Ashley Slashy said, mine broke in the first year. They have a pretty good warranty. My mom's Harvest Right freeze dryer, it broke down after the first year, and it took her some time, but eventually they sent somebody to come get it, and when it came back, it was fixed. They should have a pretty good, I didn't know they were $5,500. I think the one they sent me was $2,500 or $3,500. Red in the Valley said, my concern, okay, wait, go down. And Ashley Slashy said they won't fix it. Well, I don't, that's horrible if that's the case. I didn't know they were $5,500. Do they sell one that's $5,500? I thought their like most expensive one was like $3,500. Uncle Squirrel said he personally blames squirrels for like everything. Everything is squirrels. Village Sitter said can't afford a freeze dryer, need to put in a wood stove. I do swear by the wood stoves. Like even Danny and Wanda over at Deep South Homestead, they're in Mississippi, and they have a little wood stove. And it's because it is so versatile. It is so versatile. If you need to, you can can on it. You know, it's a little harder to do because it's harder to control the temperature, but I have done it. You can do it. Maybe I should go try and find a card to show you guys me canning on the wood stove. Hey, Andrea, how are you? Andrea said our feed has gotten ridiculously expensive. Yes, and that's why I had changed my livestock to super efficient, and mostly able to feed it off my garden. The pigs we switched to are not commercial hogs. They're little lard pigs, and I can feed them off the garden with just a tiny amount of grain, and I can keep a breeding sow or two, and I can afford to do it because they eat so little. They're small, so they're easy to butcher. And so the type of livestock you have, the actual genetics of the livestock that you have inside their breed, all of that is incredibly, incredibly important. And I have other projects. Girls, no. Pull your drawers up. Go get a belt on. Where's the puppy? Okay. So, Kaya, do you want to take the milk bucket and go milk without me for a second?
Just Kaya and I, or both?
Both. But remember, clip them away from the grain bucket and bring them to the grain bucket as you're ready to milk. Paige, can you carry the milk bucket out for her so that all she needs is for you to hand it to her?
We are doing them all the way out.
Your breakfast is right here, honey. Right here.
What?
Your breakfast is right here. It is not eggs. Okay, so I'm working really hard on only having livestock that needs a small amount of grain. For instance, geese. During the grass season, you don't even have to give them grain. They will live 100% on grass. So it's a very short amount of time that you have to feed them. That being said, I only use them for weed control. I don't butcher them. So there's, animals that don't require a huge amount of feed are not always the most prolific about putting food in your freezer. But the reason I keep the geese is to fertilize the orchard and keep the grass down in the orchard. So they still give me a lot. They mean I don't have to go out there with a weed whacker or a scythe to keep my orchard grass down, but it does mean that I'm feeding them grain and I'm not actually getting food out of them. Pardon me. Let's see. Abracadabra said, I'm freeze drying toilet paper. Very clever. I think that's a fantastic idea. Spring Meadow said, hello from Florida. Hello, hello. I'm a little jealous that you're in Florida right now. We're still pretty cold. We had a snowstorm yesterday, YouTube account said, oh yes, fermentation. Oh, we also bought a small used hand clothes washer, which soon will start using full time, was only $25 for a 10-gallon size, can also set out to catch rainwater. Interesting. So one of the things I would highly recommend is make sure that what you're spending actual money on is not gimmicky. We used a hand washer too when we were off grid, and it was nice to have it, and I love it. However, if I remember right, they sent it to me for free. If there's so much advertising that's cycling and circling in the prepper self-reliant community about these special tools that you have to have that are going to make this magic pill in your life if you ever went off grid. And I feel like there's very few things that are magic pill worthy. And I think most tools that are worth having are multifunctional. I do think the little pressure washers are wonderful. But I would also be careful that you put that you put everything down on paper and you write out the cost of everything. Honey, can you go eat it downstairs so I can't hear you? I know when I first started homesteading, there were some things that I felt like I had to have because I'd seen them on other people's websites or blogs or channels. I really felt like I had to have this thing because it was going to save so much money, or it was going to let me be so much more self-reliant. And yeah, I think that's a hard one. I think it's hard to know really, aside from food, what is worth buying and what will you really need. And so I would just say, when buying specialized tools, make sure that you've written it out in a budget and that you stay within your budget and that you try really hard to only buy things that are essential, because specialized tools can take up a lot of space and then you maybe don't have enough space for food, for actual food. I used to put, when we were in Tulsa and John was in school, I used to get Rubbermaid totes and we would put our country. Our house was like 300 square feet, and put the food storage in the Rubbermaid totes, and then I'd slide it under the girls' beds. So 6 big Rubbermaid totes full of food storage, things like sweet potatoes, things like canned goods or normal potatoes or onions. All those things were in these totes underneath the beds. And between their 2 beds, they were very small beds that I had built myself. They were only about this wide. Each one of them had like a 5 foot by 2.5 feet bed, because we didn't have room for full-size twin beds. And so we fit like 6 bins underneath those 2 beds. And it was somewhere to start. We didn't have a lot of space to put anything else, but it was good to have those things on hand. And he said, we're downsizing livestock also. It's a bit too much. Yeah. So when we went through COVID, I kind of amped up my my livestock out of fear. But then when the prices for feed started to go up too, I looked at it and I said, I cannot afford to live in fear because it's draining my bank account, so I can't take care of my family. And I'm just feeding these animals for no reason. I've already got full freezers. Why do I still have all these animals around? So at that point, I started selling my extra livestock. And that's where we're at right now, is we had 4 freezers full, and I looked at that and I realized I'm hoarding. I'm not getting through the food fast enough to have it be good. And so we got rid of 2 freezers. We're now down to 2 freezers, and sold those so that I had extra money to go buy some extra feed. I like to stay 6 months ahead on my feed. Pardon me. I really like to stay 6 months ahead on my feed. So any extra money I bring in that's from selling these livestock immediately rolls around and goes back into feed that I can store in my garage, that I can store underneath the tarp. And I don't want to get too far ahead on animal feed because it can go bad after a certain amount of time, especially if it's not in airtight containers. And so about 6 months is good. I stay a year ahead on hay for the animals. And that way it gives me time to build a cash stock back up to pay for that hay when I need to buy it. And I'm trying to be really careful to get as much as I can locally, to get sources locally, to support my local farmers, because if supply chains went down, that would be all I'd be able to get, is what is produced locally. Let's see. I missed some things. Quiet Life said, I did it all. Urban homesteading without a fridge. Now I'm looking for land, starting from scratch and visiting family. I'm having so many allergic reactions. I'm even allergic to your salt. Ha ha. Yeah, I mean that's a real part of our modern life, isn't it? Is that a lot of people are finding that just eating becomes very complicated. And so I think it's doable to find solutions. And I think it's a very personalized search for solutions. My solutions are not going to look the same as everybody else's solutions. When we switched out to these little pigs, I felt like, oh my gosh, I'd stepped to a new level, because we can get so much fat from them, and they can eat out of the garden. I can't give them commercial feed because they'll just get too big. And so having these little pigs, I suddenly felt like I could breed them. If you can't breed your animals, then you're relying on buying animals from somebody else at an elevated price. I get really tired of spending $100 a piece on baby pigs. So breeding my own, now that I have a really efficient type, is mind-boggling in how efficient I feel now, because now extra babies I can sell to pay for feed. We can keep 1 or 2 and put them in the freezer every year, but we can hold on to our genetics, and the meat is so good. But they're not so big that we can't manage to process them. If you have a 300-pound pig, unless you have a commercial freezer, it's really hard to freeze that much meat in the amount of time it needs to be frozen in. If you have, we have a smokehouse, so that when we butcher something, it has somewhere to smoke, somewhere to cool before we put it in the freezer. And we like to have small pigs, because then you've got like maybe 80 pounds of meat you're putting in the freezer, rather than 300 pounds of meat you're trying to figure out how to not overload your freezer with. But that's where the salt comes in. You really need salt, so that if you can't process your animal and get it in the freezer, you can salt it. All right, Ashy Slashy said, large freeze dryer and oilless pump, 3,500 plus 16. Oh my gosh, that's ouch. Red in the Valley said, great tip on storing in smaller pails and in the baggies. Nice that your mom does preserving fermentation. That's a huge help. Yes, I felt so bad. Last year we did our green beans, and I didn't realize the beans were on. I had sent kids out to check to see how the beans were doing, but I hadn't gone out and checked myself, and they were the last row in the garden, so I just wasn't paying attention. And one day, my mom went out in the garden, and she was just looking at what I had, and she's at the bean row, and she's like, oh my gosh, Julie, you're loaded with beans. And I had these massive, beautiful beans, and none of them had gone stringy. I'd had a lot of water on them. They were beautiful beans. And so she went out and picked like 6 bushel of beans from one plant, or from not one plant, from one row. And then it froze the next night. So she had all these beans, and they were partially frozen, and she fermented them, and they were perfect. Okay, so Demi Brock said, what do you feed your quail? Can you feed them? Honey, didn't I just feed you? Okay, close the fridge and go see if you can get your bedroom clean, okay?
I'm just gonna get out the beans to show.
Oh, you can go get a jar downstairs. Did you? Okay, that's fine. So Demi Brock said, what do you feed your quail? Can you feed them naturally? So with quail, no, those are some I canned. Honey, if you're going to get them, just go get them from the basement or from the other fridge. What do I feed my quail? So we give them either unmedicated turkey starter or wild game bird feed. You can feed them naturally, but you have to really supplement their B vitamins. They will die without enough B vitamins. They just lay down and die. So I actually just I just sold my quail, because I could only feed them what was in the feed store with the amount of time and energy I have currently. Will I bring them back? Probably. But for right now, I'm trying very hard to laser focus in on the things that I can very inexpensively feed, where I get the most bang for my buck. And so I will return to quail once I'm done focusing on making rabbits as efficient as possible. Once I'm done focusing on pigs as much as to get them down and as efficient as possible, then I'll go back to another animal that they don't they don't eat too much. Sorry, I've got a dog that needs in. They don't eat too much for what they give us. They're efficient, but because I, at this point, have not experimented with making my own feed for them, now is not the time. I need to focus on efficiency. Danny Bowl said, it's nice to see you. You haven't lost your touch for live streaming. Go get well soon. Thank you. The sad thing is I'm not actually sick. This is a lapse of COVID really affected my asthma. And so I am really struggling with my lungs. The Quiet Life said, I have that wash and it works better than any washing machine I've ever used. Yeah, the pressurized one is amazing. When we were off grid, it was a huge lifesaver. I think it's $50. It was $50 last time I bought one. And I do like to have it on hand because it's just amazing. Probably wouldn't be the first thing I bought. If I was going into food storage, I wouldn't necessarily have that be the first thing I bought. What is a small hand washer called? So it's a pressurized miracle washer. I think it's called a miracle washer. It just looks like a balloon almost. It's like a round ball on two stands on the side. I have 3 or 4 videos about it from when we were living off grid. So if you look up off grid laundry washing Dirtpatcheaven, you'll find it. And we did do laundry and it works really well for what it is. Oh, thank you. The Quiet Life said the Wonder Wash. Thank you. The Village Setter said we haven't had a microwave for about 15 years. Yeah, our microwave doesn't work. It came with the house and we didn't replace it. All right, Stringfield Ridge Farm. Hello, hello. My hubby always reminds me that our ancestors got by on way less and didn't have gadgets. Yeah, I think there's a few gadgets that are worth having just because they make life easier, but I think they're very few and far between. Which one is it? Was there any milk?
Frosted plain bag and take some food on her.
Perfect.
Night did not have really any because her baby's been eating good.
Perfect. Can you after? It's okay, honey. They're in the fridge out in the garage.
Oh, okay.
Did you know that? Okay. Do you want to take him out and let him run? It's hard to do a live stream while he is.
Can I put him outside?
No, because then he starts to scratch on the door because he wants in. So it's 14 degrees this morning outside. Okay, Village Setter said got to check out the Wonder Wash. Yeah. Let's see. Maya Bagley said, where did it go? Said thank you. Kathy said, is anyone else buffering? I'm really sorry about the buffering. Every time I do a live stream, it buffers. Andrea said, my recent prep purchase have been books. Yes, me too. That has been 100% what I have been doing, books. I also topped up all my minerals for my animals. Okay, we can show you. All right, so this is one of them that my mom did. The beans, some of them got slightly frozen, but she still fermented them anyway. And they just taste like a pickle, but they kind of buzz on your tongue because they have so many enzymes in them. And so no vinegar, just salt, which means it's truly fermented. Okay, thank you, honey. You can take it back out. All right. Oh, I love Cottage Economy and the USDA Book of Food Preservation. That's a good one. Carla Emery's Encyclopedia of Country Living. That's great. And When the Grid Goes Down. Yeah, those are all great books. The Watchman said long handle garden tool, wood stove, blankets, extra boots and shoes. Oh, yeah. All those things are very important. Lots of t-shirts and undies and socks, water filter, lots of farm books. Yeah, I would add garden seeds. I have 3 apple boxes full of garden seeds because I buy them in bulk. I don't buy little packages unless I'm trying out a new variety. If they're proven and I like the variety, I get them by the pound. I do not buy them in little packets because when I plant, I aim to plant all year round. And it takes a lot of seeds to do that. Yeah, I like that. Andrea said you can find tools in the trash. Sometimes at secondhand stores even, they'll give them away for free. Renee O'Day said, "Hey girl, going live. What a treat. I'm glad you liked it." And I am sorry that the audio is not really good and the the visual's not that good. Andrew Blue said, "Can solar salt for water softeners be used in food preservation?" I don't know. I have no idea. If a person can eat it, I would assume that it would be fine. But I don't know what the additives are in it, and I don't know if it's safe because I don't know if it's fit for human consumption. Ash, okay, Paigey, I need you to go get your room clean. I know that you're feeling wandery, but you need to stop wandering. Ashley Slashy said NASA is saying an ice age is coming. Interesting. Watchman said, "I recently found a bunch of my grandfather's broke hand garden tools, and I've been replacing the handles for about $15 each." Cool. Rusty Smith said, "Mullein leaf is so good for lungs." You are so right, and I have used it. We ran out from the last time that I harvested it, and we have it growing on our property, and I still have some left. But I think you're right. Maybe I should go buy some bulk. I just found that getting it from the health food store, it's not as fresh as it is if I gather it here on my own property. So that was one problem we had with that. Woman of Spirit said, "I just hatched out quail. I'll be interested in how you do your quail when you get yours. I just ordered mealworms to raise for my quail." That's pretty cool. Watchman said, "Suspicious Observers YouTube channel is talking about the global cooling." Another one is, Ice Age Farmer. I think that's a channel that talks about that kind of thing. Ice Age Farmer, something like that. Andrea said, "You can find mullein in early spring leaves." Yes, very true. Our problem is that our spring doesn't happen until May. And so I've got a few months to go before I can go out and harvest it. We're still under snow. Like I said, we had snow yesterday, and it's 13 degrees here right now. Sandra, how are you? Have you considered beekeeping? I have considered it, and the reason I haven't done it is because I have a lot of friends who've spent hundreds and thousands of dollars to do it here. And our winter is so long and so deep that it kills them. And there are commercial apiaries here, obviously. We do have bees local, but I do not know anyone who has successfully kept bees in my area. When they're just starting out, they always die. And again, I have friends who've spent thousands of dollars over and over and over again trying to get them. And so I work harder on putting in enough trees and flowers and bushes so that when bees from my neighbor come over, they can eat well. So I feed everybody else's bees and I don't have any. Ashy Slashy said, "You're in Louisiana at 62 degrees. Yeah, we're 13 right now. Andrea said, "I wish we could have bees. I have crop dusters that spray way too close to my property." Yeah, and we do too. Everybody here sprays. And so I just do my best to make sure I have food for them when they show up. And I try not to kill anything. Our yellow jackets are actually our biggest pollinators right now because they're the thing that seem to be able to survive with all the spraying. Watchman said, "Julianne, 14 degrees, girl, move south." You know what? I would love to buy property in the south. I would love to do that right now. It's really heavy on my heart to do that. But with finances the way that they are, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but my views are not terribly strong. And I'm only making a video once a week, which makes a difference. It's hard for me to get up and do a daily video. As you can see, I don't have makeup on. I've got work to do outside. And right now, the most I can do is one video a week and have it turn out well. And so I just don't have the finances to be able to go and buy another piece of property. I would love to. If my financial situation changed, I would definitely buy property in the south. I would love to do that. But instead, I'm blooming where I'm planted and making the most of what I have, which I think most people are in that position right now too, is nobody's really capable of going out and doing big, magnificent financial things right now because I think a lot of people are hurting financially. And so I'm trying really to show, do with what you have. Don't go outside of your budget. HS Mama Many said, "I can see and hear you just fine. Thanks for sharing your knowledge." Thank you. Red Dirt Girl said, I nebulized food grade peroxide and iodine for the crud in the lungs. My mom gave me a nebulizer. I haven't used it yet. I'm a little leery about doing it on my own. Let's see. Laurie Kurt said, how long to age chicken manure before using? It depends on what you're using it for. I use it a lot of times as an accelerant in my compost hotbeds. And so it's not actually in contact with the soil. It's only in contact with the carbon layers so that it heats up and turns into dirt. But I don't put the chicken manure in the soil part of it where our food is. I use the rabbit manure for that. So if you're doing hotbeds, you can use chicken manure immediately. Rusty Smith said, Dr. Christopher's is good. I do like Dr. Christopher. Eric WW1177, have you used einkorn before? I have. Back in the day, my mom was experimenting with different types of wheat and grains, and she tried all of them. And I have never done very well with anything that is grain or wheat related. I just cannot digest it. I go into anaphylactic shock if I've had wheat over the course of something like 72 hours. If I have repeated exposures, I start to go into anaphylactic shock at things I'm not actually allergic to just because the wheat is in my system. Demi Brock said, I fermented meat bird crumbles for my quail, cheaper than turkey or game bird feed. Would be interested in trying to dehydrate dry real mealworms for storage. My quail did really well in my greenhouse in my hotbeds. They would eat the centipedes and the mealworms, not the mealworms. What are they called? The little little pill bugs. They'd eat those in the hotbed when it was first starting to decompose, and so they can get rid of little critters in the hotbeds. And what they really love to eat is live alfalfa. They love alfalfa. And so, yeah, they did really well in my hotbeds. Let's see. The color drop said bees are our next on our list in Central Texas. I think that's fantastic. If you can do them, you totally should. Andrea said, your mom is very skilled. I'm trying fermenting with cleaning vinegars. I'm good at yogurt. I've not made cheese or veg pickles yet. So with the fermenting, when it's a true ferment, you're using salt. And is it called lacto-fermented? It's what happens is there's a certain bacteria that can live in the presence of salt and it's beneficial, but the salt kills all the other bacteria so that it can't rot. And that's when it turns into a pickle. So a true ferment is made with salt, not with vinegar. Even though once it is fermented, it tastes a little bit like vinegar. The actual process has to follow through. It goes through a process with the salt, a progression. And once it reaches the end of its progression, it's preserved and it's a pickle. And if you just use vinegar, it skips that progression and it has to be sealed and cooked to seal that jar. If you do a vinegar pickle instead of a salt pickle. Ed Gray Wolf said, Layens beehives needed and make swarm traps. My neighbor used to have bees in one of his apple trees back in the day. Sandra Clark said, my husband is retiring in April and we're moving to the cabin spring and summer. That sounds amazing. Good job. Andrea said there's types of solar salt with no additives. I would do my research on that then, Andrea. I don't know enough about that kind of salt to really tell you yay or nay. I know that my mom does not use she doesn't use pink salt. She doesn't use, Paige, can you turn it off, please? She doesn't use real salt. She doesn't use anything with minerals in it. She uses just 100% non-iodized salt. And so I know that's what my mom does. She's way bigger into it than I am. I grow the food. She seems to be the one that ferments it for me. Stringfield Ridge Farm said, yes, love that you said blooming where I'm planted. I think it's very important. I think we can strike out in fear when we believe we're supposed to be somewhere than we are, and when we believe we're supposed to have more than we do. If instead we can look at what we have and make the most out of it, then I think our stress level comes way down because we look at what's possible rather than looking at the cosmos and wishing that we had more. Okay, I need you to go get your bedroom clean. Okay, then go get all the laundries and go take them downstairs, okay? Okay. You have them in the greenhouse. Okay. If you want to go get your coveralls on and go butcher the roosters, that would be fine. But you need to have something on so you're not staining your pants.
Are you done?
I am not done, but your sister keeps wanting to walk behind the camera.
Oh, stop it. You gotta make walk. I'm trying to do something. It's hard.
Okay, again, I want you to have something on so you're not getting blood on your pants, please. Metka says, do you keep composting worms? So we have worms underneath our rabbits and also in the hotbeds, and they seem to just, we had red wrigglers in our hotbeds, our outside hotbeds, the last several years, and I didn't put them there. They just showed up with the rabbit manure. They do really well with the rabbit manure, so they just kind of show up on their own. But we have quite a few red wriggler worms, yes. Andrea said, how's your greenhouse crops? The last bout of COVID that I had, I didn't go out and cover them one night. They were doing fine in the hotbed. I had the sweet potatoes going in February, and then I didn't cover them one night because I was too lazy. I didn't feel good. So I've had to replant. But the little greenhouse, the short one with the cow panels, it's totally off and going. We've got greens and all sorts of things out there in that hotbed. I haven't taken videos of that yet. We've had baby goats, baby lambs being born, and I've just really had a hard time keeping up on things. Okay, Ashley Slashy is asking about how much iodine to peroxide, what type of nebulizer. I don't know. My mom gave it to me. I have all the ingredients. I haven't done it yet. Yeah. Quiet Life said, yes, lacto fermentation. Hello, Valdemir. How are you? Red Dirt Girl said, check out the LDS Prepper on the nebulizer instructions. Very good point. Yes. David Gilmore is doing a lot of good stuff over on his channel right now. Ed Gray Wolf said, is sprouted alpha for the quail. So the alfalfa that they really liked actually was growing in the greenhouse at the time. Some of it had sprouted up, and I noticed that the only plants they really bothered in the greenhouse were these little sprigs of alfalfa that were coming up in the paths. And so we then later sprouted them some alfalfa, and they loved that too. They seem to really enjoy sprouts. Ashley Slashy said, I love my jumbo quail. The poop creates so much fly larvae, cuts my chicken feed in half. That's awesome. I would love to see how you do that. Do you have a video up on that? Andrew Blue said, it's almost 50 degrees in Indiana, feeling blessed because usually we have cold temps into May. Yeah, that's us too. We don't get grass. Our grass doesn't start to grow until May. Andrew said, do what you can with your energy. Your info is gold regardless. Oh, you're very kind. Thank you. Rusty said, Korean sea salt used to make kimchi. Yes, and I do keep a gallon of that on hand for kimchi, and it's fantastic salt. I think what salt you use really depends on your recipe, what your end goal is. And, but yeah, we have a lot of different types of salt that we keep on hand, but we keep the most of just what we would use if we were curing pork. Kavensky said, when do we meet your mother? She's on my channel occasionally, and she's willing to do videos about the freeze dryer. She's done some amazing things with her freeze dryer. And I'm not downplaying the value of maybe having a freeze dryer, but it would be like the last thing on my list. It would be after homesteading and after food storage, just because of the cost. The Quiet Life said, fermenting brought a huge sense of abundance to my life. I agree. When you ferment things, their nutritional value seems to just go up so much higher. It benefits your gut flora. And so, yeah, I'm really blessed that my mom will make all these ferments. We've got cabbage, we got pickles from cucumbers, we got the beans. We always have a lovely abundance because my mom is willing to put that work in. Woman of Spirit said, where did you get the sprouting trays for fodder? From my mom. I think it's called like the Ultimate Sprouting Kit or something like that. I know if you go back and look at my 2 videos, you can see it. I did put up 2 videos within like the last 2 months of sprouting, that kind of thing. Elsie said, have you ever grown any tilapia or fish farming at all? So we have a canal next to our house that has fish in it during the season when there's water in the canal. And we have local fishing streams. I don't raise fish, but my neighbor catches fish. And so we always have fresh fish in our freezer because of our neighbor. It's too cold here to do tilapia unless you have them in a greenhouse. I do have a friend that has tilapia in his greenhouse, but to keep the tanks clean and alive and not cracking, he had to take all his tilapia out because the tanks cracked. And so, yes, I do know people who've done it in our area. I have not done it. There has not been a reason to do it because our neighbor is a master fisherman and he always brings us fish. Ashley Slashy said, I'll email it to you. I would love that. Thank you. Andrea said, I'm trying to ferment juniper greens and berries with a bit of sugar and water free of chemicals. I made a juniper beer. It's like ginger beer. It's not an actual beer, but it's like a soda pop kind of. We did that with spruce, and it turned out so good. It was our favorite beer that I've made to date. So good. Andrew Blue said, I will definitely research salts. Thank you. I was curious about solar salt for curing meats because it's so cheap for so much per bag. When it comes down to it, you probably don't need more than 100 pounds of salt. Again, it takes like 5 pounds of salt to cure a pig, one of my pigs anyway. And it takes very little to ferment vegetables. It's like a few tablespoons. And so 100 pounds of salt will really see you through. And for me, at least in my area, normal salt in a 25-pound bag is like $9. And so I wouldn't go overboard on the salt as far as like you don't need like 500 pounds of it, but 100 pounds of it is a good thing to have on hand. Quiet Life said, I have to go, but thank you. Thank you. Mecca said someone had a chick die. They took the carcass and hung it high in their bird tractor. Flies came and maggot larvae would fall down and the other birds ate the fallen maggot larvae. So in my area, the reason I can't do that is because anytime you have a dead animal and you have the smell of dead animal, it attracts predators. We do have good chicken coops, but whenever we butcher an animal, whenever we have something like that, we keep it as far away from the house as we can. We'll put it in a compost pile, cover it with sawdust, and that way, okay, you can go. And that way, when predators, which they will, if something smells like death, predators will come on your property. That way it takes the predators away from the chicken coops and away from the goats. And it attracts the predators to the corners of my property where I don't have anything alive. And we have all sorts of things that come and try to get into our hotbeds when we have a carcass in there. I don't like my cats to eat pig guts, pig innards because of the parasites. And so that's what we do is we bury the pig guts in a hotbed next to the trees. And then we don't use that compost for vegetables. We just keep it breaking down next to the trees and it feeds the trees. Thank you, Laurie Kurtz. Ecocentric said, sat down at the computer, got YouTube notice, but didn't notice it was alive. That's why I wasn't here 10 minutes ago. Well, thanks for making it now. Ecocentric said she uses juniper twigs for tea. Sorry, or he. I don't know if you're male or female. Your title is great, but non-binary. Is that how we say it now? Andrew said, oh no, so sorry about your garden and down health. Hope you're back to full strength soon. I am okay. It's just like anybody else in the world. We are doing what we can in the moment, aren't we? Hey, Jennifer. Space Girl said, I've sprouted wheat for my chickens using plastic shoe boxes, put holes in the bottom and top, let water drip through, use bottom to feed, and berries and water to top. That's awesome. He. Okay. Ecocentric is a he. Thank you. All right. So I have little kids that are out there trying to get 2 roosters butchered. We had 4 that came in from a friend. We're going to keep 2 for our hens to have roosters for fertile eggs, but the other 2 need to be butchered because they're just being too rough on the hens. So I am going to go and help them and maybe get my kitchen clean. Hopefully that was helpful. Tomorrow I'm going to come on and try to talk about dry goods. Again, if you have a favorite video of mine, please share it. I'm not asking you to share all the videos, but if you have one that felt like it was particularly helpful, please share it. I don't want to have to go remake the videos that I've already made. Life changes. My capacity to get in front of the camera when I'm trying to get everything done on the homestead has greatly diminished since I turned 40. It's very much harder for me to get out there and remake some of these videos that I've already made. So if you can share the videos that you really care about and, you know, get the word out to people. I try really hard. I don't do clickbait titles anymore. I did years ago. I did clickbait, but my family was really reliant on that income, and that was when I was doing clickbait. So I don't do clickbait anymore, and I try really hard to have my videos be true to what the title says. And sometimes it's hard for people to find those videos because they're not outlandish titles. They're not outlandish thumbnails. And I'm trying really hard to get the word out to people not to be afraid, not to fear purchase, not to be focusing on the wrong things that aren't actually putting in food in your fridge right now. And so that's why I'm making these live videos, even though they're not perfect and polished. I'm just trying to help people calm down a little bit and focus on what they can actually do to help themselves. Thank you. Thank you. I really care about you guys. I thank you for coming in and visiting with me, so I'm not just here blathering to myself. And I'll try really hard to keep doing this until I have this list finished. Space Girl said, can you use your older videos as premieres? I don't know. I think I could go and put them in links in posts. Like if I went and just did the typing post and put a link into an old video, I can do that. I could do that. I find that my time is eaten up by actually going out and homesteading most of the time. And by the time I come in, the most I can really do is edit the new video. So that, and I don't know what your favorite videos are, which is why I say pick your favorite videos, see if you can get them shared. Because a lot of times I don't remember that I've made a video, or I don't know that it really resonated with a person. And so I might put up videos that don't feel as important to you guys as they did to me when I made them, if that makes sense. So anyway, I'm going to go pop off. Thank you very much, guys, and we'll talk to you later. Oh, if you guys want to know about my posts that I put on Patreon, I do daily posts where I just kind of brain dump about my current solution for a particular problem. I've been talking a lot about rabbits and goats and sheep lately. Those are the 3 things that I'm doing right now. So those are the things I'm writing about. And so a lot of people have asked, well, why don't you write a book? Well, I'm trying really hard to get little smidgens of something like a book on the Patreon, trying to get more ideas about if I was ever to write a book. These are the things that I forget to say when I start to write it. So if that's helpful, don't feel obligated in that anyway. But some people like to listen to my brain dump about putting baby sheep on milk goats. So anyway, Lori Brand said 100 pounds of salt for your family. Of course, that for a year. That is food storage so that I can cure meat and I can ferment vegetables. That is not our consumption of salt. That is having salt on the shelf for food preservation. So anyway, love you guys. See you later.